My religion, my life. Yes. And this is you supposed to read this, not me. My religion, my life. Let's start with a quote from Matthew. Jesus speaking. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. So my question today was, what kind of foundation are we building in our lives? And to recap one more time, the goal of history is salvation. Salvation is restoration. The goal of history, therefore, is restoration. Well, what does restoration mean? If we study what has happened in human history and where we are going, sometimes it's not altogether clear. But the purpose of religion is basically this: to reconnect us with God. In a nutshell, God is our heavenly parent. We lost connection with God. We are trying to restore our relationship with our God. So the question then, if that is the purpose of religion, then what is our religion? What do we believe is true? Are we following our religion? If not, why not? Do we have principles? So, these are rhetorical questions that we need to ask ourselves, because, as Aristotle said, the unreflected life is wasted. That's paraphrased, by the way. I don't remember exactly what he said. But basically, we need to reflect on our lives from time to time. Give ourselves thinking time. I saw on the news yesterday one of the founders of this big .com company. I think it's called Reddit. And he was asked, what would you focus on now that you've learned to be very important in building a successful business? And he said, one of the things he said was carving out thinking time. Because you get so busy with the day-to-day and people wanting to meet you and talk with you and blah, 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 you very often just don't have enough time to think about what you're doing, where you're going, what your company is going to be like in 5 years, 10 years' time, etc. So what is your religion? What do you believe in? So the roadmap to salvation, that's what religion is supposed to be. So, is your religion, is what you believe in, going to take you somewhere? And if so, where? Have you asked yourself lately what you believe in, what your religion is? There is this series my kids and I are watching called Brain Games. It's on Netflix. It's very fascinating. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but we are watching it right now. We're on season 2. And the interesting thing about that is that basically they're studying how the brain is very often tricking us. And often it's really designed for detecting movement and ignoring a lot of information. Because in order to survive as a species, our brains needed to detect movement for our own safety. So if something's rustling in the bushes up ahead, your eyes and your brain figure out, oh, something that could be a predator, that could be a threat. But now, in today's age, our brain can very often just leave out a whole bunch of information that's crucial for our understanding. And there's one chapter in this series on brain games where it talks about the illusion of knowledge. And one of the experiments this guy did is he walks into a university class and he asks the students, I don't believe they were engineering students, but he asked the students, draw me a bicycle. Because everybody knows what a bicycle looks like. Everybody can ride a bicycle. So just draw me a bicycle. And so just a basic rudimentary outline of what a bicycle is shaped like. And 9 out of 10 students got it completely wrong. And he knew that would happen. So before even walking into the classroom, they had designed bicycles that were made according to the common mistakes people make. And so they had these bicycles lined up outside. And then they compared the drawings with the bicycles that were made wrongly. And they would say, okay, you drew this picture. We have the bike that you made. Go ahead and ride it. And of course it's back to front, and it's like, how can you ride this thing? The person tried and fell off right away. 9 people out of 10 got it wrong. And then they did this other experiment where they said, okay, here's some general knowledge questions. Now, you probably don't know the answers to these, but what we are asking you to do in this experiment is give me the lowest estimate and the highest estimate. And hopefully the real answer is somewhere in between. So they would ask people, how many books are there in the Old Testament? Now, most people don't know. But they would say, well, just give me a low estimate. Okay, 5. Give me a high estimate. Somebody? 50, 25, 15, I don't know. 1,000. Well, turns out that's a pretty smart thing to say. Because the rule of the game is to give a low and a high and to get the number in between. And if you get the number in between, you're correct. But most people who had no clue would give very short or very narrow parameters. Like books in the Old Testament, 5. The highest, 15. Turns out there's 39 books in the Old Testament. How about countries in Africa? Any clue on that one?
22.
Okay, low would be 22, high would be 150. Okay, that's good, Mike, because it turns out there's 57 countries in Africa. Most people, they would give themselves very small parameters. Length of Mississippi in miles.
The river?
The river.
1,482.
Okay.
2,000, maximum 3,000.
Okay, good. I'm glad you said maximum 3,000. Turns out it's 2,350. So, things like that. People would give themselves very small parameters to questions that they absolutely did not know the answer to. And the reason for this is because our brain, there's a war going on in our brain where our illusion of knowledge is being tested. Because we go through our day not knowing much about most things, it turns out. But the reality of not knowing much is so crippling and so frightening that our brain convinces us, oh yeah, we know. Do you know how a zipper works? Yeah, I know how a zipper works. Do you know what a bicycle looks like? Yeah. Turns out, when we get tested on these things, we don't know how a zipper works. We don't know how many countries there are in Africa. We don't know a lot of things, and yet we convince ourselves that we do. So this is called the overconfidence effect. So we hide the fact that actually we're incompetent.
Alone.
And that's the short end of it. We are incompetent. We don't accept that, and so we hide it from ourselves to protect ourselves. It's kind of like a survival technique. So And that's okay, because that's the brain's job. The brain's job is to keep you safe. I mean, if there's a fire, and there's a window, and there's a door, and the fire's near the door, and the window's, it's a one-story house, you're not going to sit there and start reasoning about, okay, should I go through the door, or should I go through the window? Maybe I should call my mom and ask her. No. At that moment, you just start doing something. A tiger jumps out at you, and you start running before you even know what you're running from. Okay, that's the brain's job. Now, the thing is that when it comes to religion, we have to really know what our map looks like. And ideally, a map isn't just a general idea of like, yeah, go south. How do I get to LA? Go that way. Go that way. Because, you might go, oh, that was very helpful. Thank you. I was going this way, but now you told me to go that way. That's really helpful information. Thank you. But then after a while, you're going to be wanting more information, right? Just keep walking. This way? Yeah, okay. Eventually, you want to know more precise details. So that's the beauty of the GPS. It tells you, go that way, go on this road, just trust me, just go. When we get to the nitty-gritty of the particular street and the house we're looking for, then I'll tell you more information then. But right now, just go this way. Okay? So that's what our religion is supposed to tell us. Our map is supposed to give us guidelines on life. How many people in here know how to play a musical instrument proficiently? Oh, see, we lost all our musicians. See, Charles and I would never say yes. Proficiently. Oh, yeah, no. I'm not qualified for that answer. So the point I wanted to make, if there was such a person in this room right now, would be to learn an instrument proficiently, you have to train yourself. And you have to follow certain rules and guidelines. And it's not every day is a wonderful day when you're learning a musical instrument. In fact, it's a lot of grind, it's a lot of repetition, it's a lot of discipline. But the result is freedom. Freedom to play whatever comes to your mind, whatever music you feel in your heart on a particular day, you can then express. So it's similarly, these rules and regulations that we see in religion, for instance, in our Judeo-Christian religion, starting with the Ten Commandments all the way up to the Beatitudes that Jesus spoke on the Sermon on the Mount, these are guidelines. They're very profound in their meaning. They're guidelines, but they're not designed to restrict you. They're designed to set you free. So that interpretation of rules and laws helps us to get a better understanding, I think, that religion is something necessary. In a society that's going in a very secular direction, what would be the goal of that society? First of all, the goal of that society would be to throw away the rule book. Because now, with the rule book out the way, we get to make our own rules. We get to redefine everything. Everything fundamental to what God has been teaching us, we throw away, and we get to redefine everything in our kind of adolescent state of mind. I know better. And that's the way I see the world today. We're kind of going through this adolescent stage. You know, when you're younger, you look up to your parents, and your parents are God, and that's all wonderful for a while. And then they get to a certain age, and they start questioning everything. And then they get to another age, and they start looking at you like, who are you? And then finally it comes around when life starts throwing things at them, and then finally they get to realize, oh yeah, I'm really not that smart. I'm really not as knowledgeable as I thought I was. So that's why Mark Twain said, when I was 14, I couldn't stand my father. He was such an ignorant ass. But I was so amazed how much he learned in 7 years. Of course, it was him who went through the transition. But, but really, think about your religion. Think about your map. Where is it taking you? And here are some questions to ponder. What is the greatest desire in my heart? What does salvation look like to me? Am I pulling or am I being pulled? Who am I? Where have I arrived at in my life so far? I don't have to answer that one. Where am I going? So, I'd like to read a short section from this book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. The reason I want to read this is because the point I'm making, well, actually I'll make that point later. First I want to explain the background. This is a book written by an internment camp survivor, concentration camp survivor, Second World War, held by the Nazi regime into a very, very demeaning and pretty disgusting concentration camp situation. And then finally, they were free. Okay, the war ended, the white flags went up, and they were free to leave the camp. And this is the reaction that they had to that day. So, please bear with me. So, life in a concentration camp tore open the human soul and exposed its depths. Is it surprising that in those depths we again found only human qualities, which in their very nature were a mixture of good and evil? With tired steps, we prisoners dragged ourselves to the camp gates. Timidly, we looked around and glanced at each other questioningly. Then we ventured a few steps out of the camp. This time, no orders were shouted at us, nor was there any need to duck quickly to avoid a blow or a kick. Oh no, this time the guards offered us cigarettes. We hardly recognized them at first. They had hurriedly changed into civilian clothes. We walked slowly along the road leading from the camp. Soon our legs hurt and threatened to buckle, but we limped on. We wanted to see the camp surroundings for the first time with the eyes of free men. Freedom, we repeated to ourselves, and yet we could not grasp it. We had said this word so often during all the years we dreamed about it, that it had lost its meaning. Its reality did not penetrate into our consciousness. We could not grasp the fact that freedom was ours. We came to meadows full of flowers. We saw and realized that they were there, but we had no feelings about them. The first spark of joy came when we saw a rooster with a tail of multicolored feathers, but it remained only a spark. We did not yet belong to this world. In the evening, when we all met again in our hut, one said secretly to the other, "Tell me, were you pleased today?" And the other replied, feeling ashamed as he did not know that we all felt similarly, "Truthfully, no." We had literally lost the ability to feel pleased and had to relearn it slowly. One day, a few days after the liberation, I walked through the country past flowering meadows for miles and miles towards the market town near the camp. Larks rose to the sky and I could hear their joyous song. There was no one to be seen for miles around. There was nothing but the wide earth and sky and the larks' jubilation and the freedom of space. I stopped. I looked around and up to the sky, and then I went down on my knees. At that moment, there was very little I knew of myself or of the world. I had but one sentence in my mind, always the same sentence. I called to the Lord from the narrow prison, and he answered me in the freedom of space. How long I knelt there and repeated this sentence, memory can no longer recall. But I know that on that day, In that hour, my new life started. Step for step, I progressed until I again became a human being. Yes. So the point is, none of us have tasted the kingdom of heaven. For us, the idea of God is an idea. The reality of God hasn't yet sunk in. We are in darkness. We've been born in darkness. We've been raised in darkness. And yet we're being offered this idea of light. But to us, unfortunately, it's a concept. And to get there, we're going to have to invest ourselves in finding it. It is not going to come naturally to us in this world. In an ideal world, yes, it would have been introduced to us from birth. We would have been raised in light. We would have been loved in light. And we would have lived and breathed light. But that is not our situation. And we should not forget the world we're living in and the world we're going towards. We have to understand that distinction. And we have to know that in order to get there, we're going to have to put in the hard work to make it happen in our lives, in our families' lives. And that's the only way it's going to happen. I'd like to finish with a hopeful text given to us by our founder, Reverend Sun Myung Moon. And he's talking about this book of compilation that has been made. It's called the Cheonseonggyung. And he's explaining what that book title means and the hope that it offers us. So, Cheonseonggyung, Reverend Moon explained, this is the holy book for the kingdom of heaven. Cheon consists of the Chinese characters meaning two and people. When you think of the two central people in a family, you think of the husband and wife. The separation of heaven and earth came about because a husband and a wife lost the way to love. Therefore, in order for heaven and earth to reach completion, these two people must follow the holy way, in which they must love completely. This way is elucidated in Cheonseonggyung. Therefore, Cheonseonggyung redefines or defines the way for two people to walk towards holiness. This way is none other than the family. So, in lieu of our religious beliefs, please discuss why you come here each Sunday and what you would hope for in our community and in your personal life. So we now have a goal to talk about in this Sunday service, not just the weather. In case you want to talk about the weather, it's hot, we all get it. So that discussion is finished. So, thank you very much.